quietly in his car with another guy inside. The place, the 7-Eleven or whatever convenience store called in that crime, obviously tipped off the police, the colleagues of this guy tipped him off that we've got you guy whom you want to
Do you
knock
think
off.
the facts would matter? Do you think the facts would matter in our legal system?
No, not in our legal system.
You would get off.
With a
No,
quick
what I'm saying, theoretically, there's proof. Whether the
I'm
people
gonna
do
tell
it or not is another story.
goes put in our courtroom for days and days and days in domestic violence court, and that will tell you how our legal system works in any criminal case.
It's the same everywhere. Everywhere.
See, the thing is, they don't have those legal problems in
You want
Hong
the
Kong.
cut, dry, simple conviction.
You have them everywhere in the world.
You do.
Yeah, I know.
There is a group.
It doesn't matter whether you're communist or capitalist or
Right.
anything.
There are international law societies that are actually trying to improve the systems because they do know that there's certain deficiencies in them.
I think AI would clean that up, and you would have less corruption.
Yeah,
Whatever.
Conversation about law. Today's Economic Monday.
Yeah, we're supposed to do economics, but we switched over to legal for a little while. So, Abhijeet, what's happening over in New Delhi?
All good. It's going very well. नमस्कार, कैसे हैं राकेश?
बस ठीक है, आप कैसे?
All good.
We've got such a interesting situation, and sometimes I think our legal system is part of our economic downfall. So to talk about some of the things that occur and happen, because a lot of people don't know that in any murder situation, it costs our system $8 million to process for every fatality in domestic violence. And this is funny because David K. Johnson thought I made that number up, and I didn't. I took that from economic people who did research, like in deep research, and they did not make this number up. And he came on our show not too long ago. He goes, and Kim was, I did my background check, and she was right. $8 million per fatality. So that is an economic problem when we consider.
That is an economic problem. That's
and I can't imagine when an officer kills someone.
Oh yeah.
What economic cost that is to our judicial system, because they have to do even more.
Well, you have to realize that if assuming he can't hire an attorney, he gets a public defender. So he has a public defender defending him, which is paid by the state. A prosecutor is paid by the state. Free room and board for the rest of his life, paid by the state. You're right. What he did, and unfortunately economically, is extremely expensive. Forget all the damage that took place because of the protests / riots. What he did was extremely expensive. And but here's what gets me. Where was his trainers? And also, I have a real problem with all those people standing around. In other words, none of the cops said
nobody
something.
did anything.
Are you kidding me? And this is why I said, look at the case Jordan versus the City of New London. And the bystanders, including the person that apparently had he took the money from or counterfeited him, was trying to say, hey, dude, you got to get off this guy's neck. I mean, this is basic common sense. And there was no protest. That tells me the city of Minneapolis has a very serious training problem with their police force. Not just a little problem, a serious problem.
Well, here's the problem I had. Not one officer there had a camera on their suit, which I thought had become an issue thing. And I know in San Francisco, every officer has a camera on their suit. And the reason why I know this is I know the inventor of the guy.
Cool.
Yes, I do. He's a very young man, very, very young man from a university, and came up with the idea of reusing cameras from phones to embed them into the suits of officers so that we could have evidence of wrongful things. But, and his way to sell things was to reduce cost, right? It wasn't.
Hi, Edward. Welcome.
Hello, Edward.
Professor,
Edward,
he's muted.
You're muted. Abhijeet, and how are things going technically in your part of the world? Do y'all use technology to help enforce crime?
I believe that what has happened, there is a system already in the place for understanding that who is culprit and whose mistake is this. If something has happened because of non-duty negligence or the problem of training for somebody, then obviously it is not not a mistake by the system or by the department. So violence which has happened against one person and done by again one person, he might be a police officer or it might be somebody who is related to administration, but there is a way to handle such thing in the democracy. There has to be compensation, there has to be legal process for that, and they may lose their job, they may lose their dignity or pension or whatever. And how difficult we have to make life for them if they does something wrong with people being owning an police uniform. It depends on us. But in vice versa, when people take law in their hand, the kind of losses which as a whole city goes, I think more than 7 or 8 cities has gone under violence, and lots of loot and robbery has been reported. Lots of firing, not in terms of gun firing, but lots of fire and incidents has been happened. So if one person has died because of one individual mistake, a system or a city or an area or a country cannot be set on fire for that. That is I think everyone would have to agree. Then the second thing which comes is we have precedented a very wrong idea of entering into politics. Lots of people try a political angle into this because the precedence has came into that way. You do not do something constructive to enter into politics. What you do is there is a project, okay, I will go and call for a strike and it will be stalled. There is a nuclear project, there is a hydropower project, there is a dam, there is some solar project, and somebody who has a manpower or someone who has a communist type of mindset behind and have a support of people who are workers or who are laborers, they go and they stop something. That becomes the political entry. So people who are trying their luck on politics by these violences, they should be strongly deterred. Other than that, there is a way for doing it. If it is not working, then I would give a very serious warning that people who are extremely and who are very, very much aggressively talking about human rights and personal rights, if tomorrow they will be in power, police will remain same. They will not change a lot.
Well, I have one comment to make on that because I agreed with very much what you said. But if, as a chess player, if checker players had singled us out and killed us and done horrible things to us, lynched us, and did unspeakable things to us year after year after year, decade after decade after decade, and all of a sudden I'm sick of it, I'm tired of it, I can't stand checker players doing this to chess players, and ever again, I just might light a match and set fire to something. If this has been happening for so long, and no redress.
I wouldn't, but anyway, I would be too busy playing golf and tennis. But since Professor Snyder has joined us, and he is in the jurisdiction of, I believe, well, no, he's not. He should be in the First Circuit or Second Circuit Court of Appeals. There's a famous case, Professor Snyder, that we went over earlier, called Jordan versus the City of New London. And the City of New London is in your state of Connecticut, I believe, right? If you read that case, it was actually in the year 2000. Here's what happened. A guy who, they give you IQ tests to get on the police force, the City of New London. He scored too high. His IQ was over 125. And what happened is the police force in the City of New London go, oh, you can't get on the police force. Why not? You're too smart. We don't allow smart people with high IQs on our police force. So this is a true case. Go Google it afterwards. Jordan, like the country of Jordan versus the City of New London. So he appealed. They went through trial. He lost on trial. Went to appeal on the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, and they ruled in favor of the City of New London, that if your IQ is too high, you're not allowed on a police force. Now, think about that one. When I read that case, you are not allowed to discriminate on race, sex, but you can discriminate if people have too high IQs, and they allowed it. And I'm going like, wait a minute. So if I score 125 or better, I can't be on the police force. And so what do we get? stupid police, of course. I mean, it's kind of the way it is. But the thing is, even though it's persuasive but not binding in all the other circuits, it really bothered bejeebers out of me, because what happens is everybody was standing around because their brains couldn't kick in and say, hey, empirically, something's wrong. You got to stop this. Nobody did anything except the bystanders were trying to stop it, and they couldn't stop it. And I was going, this is incredible. But Jordan versus the City of New London is a really bothersome case, at least in my opinion. And I think it should be read by everybody, especially the people in the Mega Society Titan group, and if you're a mental level, you're not allowed on a police force. Are you kidding me? And that was passed by the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. You think those judges would be smart enough to go, we can't allow this because we'll end up with this. So great case. I told everybody you should read it. I read it years ago, and I'm going like, okay, it is. In other words, it is what it is out there. But to me, it's bothersome from constitutional principles that you're discriminated. But then, as I was telling Jim, I said what people don't understand about IQ tests, if you take a lot of them psychometric testing in general, a Wechsler, a Stanford Binet, and a Cattell norm differently. Like in chess, if you have an ELO rating from FIDE, USCF, Lee Chess, or chess.com, they're different. So 125 can be different depending on what type of test you take. But it bothered me because when I saw this case come out of Minneapolis, I was going, well, you're getting adverse selection here. And
in general.
Pardon? It's a big problem, and I think Jordan versus the City of New London should be read by elementary school students, and this is another problem that we have in our education system, since you're into that, Professor Snyder. And Jim is into chess. Years ago when I was playing chess, there was a myth that elementary school students aren't smart enough to learn chess, so they didn't teach it. Right, Jim? You were there too. Yep. Today, what's the biggest group of kids that play chess? Elementary school students, because guys like Jim came in and they trained elementary school students to play chess. So now chess is big in elementary schools. There's a myth that criminal law and criminal procedure can't be taught to elementary school students. Are you kidding me? Of course it could. The real problem is our teachers haven't been trained in criminal law and criminal procedure enough to even teach the students, which also we saw in the chess community. The teachers didn't know enough about chess to teach the chess to the students. And we got a real problem, in my opinion, Professor Snyder, in our education system. We have an 18th century education system in the United States. Seriously, same old, hey, you go to a classroom, you learn the stuff, you show up, blah, 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 and you move through and you progress through tables. We have an opportunity because of coronavirus to scale everything through the internet. And years ago, I read a study, maybe it was ssrn.com, that said, well, the future of education is you have one bright professor who scales worldwide or throughout the whole country through using the internet. Okay, and that myth never took place, by the way. I mean, I thought, well, that's going to happen the next 10 years. Never happened, because we have a vested interest in not changing our education system. But literally, you could have one great criminal law professor, criminal procedure professor, teach elementary students throughout the United States the difference between a riot and a protest. Why one's legal, why one's not. Okay, I mean, it's and some of the finer points. Because remember, when I was studying criminal law and criminal procedure, I thought, when does freedom of speech become not freedom of speech? Of course, the old case was, well, you yell fire in a crowded theater. But there's all these little fine points of law that could be taught to elementary school students, as opposed to what we've been doing. And we have an opportunity to do that. And this way, people would know, hey, why is this manslaughter, not a murder charge? What's the difference? There's fine point differences, but that would take a major overhaul of our education system. And I just don't see that happening in the next 10 years. It's more theoretical than advanced, but in other words, you could have the Yale professors, some of the top professors in the world, scale through the internet. And we had the gentleman on, unfortunately, weren't there, from University of Illinois, the dean of the Illinois Business School. Now, what they did, and I fell out of my chair when he told me this, they created a internet master in science and management, and of course, internet MBA, which means they get scale worldwide. But that's the one thing that got me. The thing that got me is the pricing. $10,000 for the master's in science and management, and only $20,000 for an MBA. Are you kidding me? You know, I don't see how you can do it at those prices, but that's what he said they just did at University of Illinois, and I was kind of impressed because I don't know how you can get those pricing points, but I guess that's not my problem. What is Yale? Are they doing anything on the internet in terms of their education system on the business school? Voice, can't hear.
Volume.
I think need to reconnect.
Oh,
Have
maybe.
to sign off,
You think
and
it's
then
a connection issue?
Well, as a fellow nutmaker, I could take that question, Nick. I'm just kidding.
You could?
I was born in New Haven, so.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I used to have a place up in Greenwich.
Well, when you talk about New London, as though we adopted London,
right?
We had New London, New York, and we had New England. So we copied a lot from the UK.
we have New Delhi.
New Delhi.
Well, yeah, I have New Delhi, and I have to ask Ankit, what happened to Old Delhi? Well, Old Delhi's in the middle of the country, and
just to there you go, folks. This is from the real government database. This is not from LexisNexis. I don't have access.
What is it?
You have to be an attorney to get LexisNexis.
No, you don't. You just have to pay a fee.
Yeah, unless you're an attorney, you have to pay a really big fee. But anyway, this is from one of the government, the courthouse, basically. There are other ways to get this information, not as easy, but this is from the government. And the title.
What does it say for us blind people who can't read?
So the paper discusses the recruiting and selection process within the United States law enforcement agencies, the role of intelligence in police selection practices, and the potential impact of a U.S. district court case in the Connecticut.
Is that a publication you pulled on?
That's it's a court publication. It's the court
Jordan versus the City of New London. There we go. Yep. Famous case. Okay. Now, Jordan of the City of New London, in my opinion, is like the famous case that. I mean, seriously, it should have been on all the reporters' mouths when this thing came out. Instead, we got about this.
This is the research paper on the I guess the full.
Okay,
everything that happened.
One of the research papers on SSRN.com dealing with Jordan versus the City of New London and the selection of police officers. Okay, right. I tried to listen to as many news reports as I could. No news media in the country.
Was it his IQ?
This case, not one.
It was that he scored too high on the cognitive ability.
I know that.
Cognitive.
Jordan versus the City of New London, all the people in the high IQ societies know this case, or they should know this case.
Right.
They should have known this case. But the reporters around the world or around the United States, not one reporter mentioned, well, we could have a selection process. And what they call an adverse selection process. Well, what's that? Well, we adversely select our police officers based on the case Jordan versus the City of New London. I was waiting to listen to that. Nothing.
I'm curious.
Belief,
sue my government for not hiring intelligent people, for using means to not.
As an attorney and a former law professor at Campbell Law School, you can always spend your rest of your life in court if you so desire. You can always do that, but you're going nowhere in your life.
Money. If you have this,
if you get paid, then it's okay. But if you're going to go pro se or do it free or public interest, good luck with that. Professor Snyder, can you talk?
Oh, first of all, can you hear me?
Yeah, we
can hear you. Yay! Technology. I love it. Okay, what's going on at Yale? You guys have online courses available for people?
Yeah, we've been going online using this network of schools around the world. So, and now we're really pushing hard to accelerate the progress. And, it's a very interesting process. We've got about 30 schools. It's sort of everybody throws in a course or two. teaches it online, and then students throughout that network can take those courses. And then separately, I think this fall, the university has not made an announcement except to say that we're going to start. They haven't identified how we're going to start. So if I were a betting person, I would say we'll be online.
Yeah, and what's wrong with online education? See, at Northeastern where I teach, for 10 years, okay, the graduate tax program, they start as online and we're still online. I don't have any problem with that, okay? And I don't think the students have a problem with that. Why is there such a resistance? Okay, of course, when you just graduate from high school, you want the social life of going to school, okay? All the parties, the people you get to meet, you know, the social interaction. It's the first time away, but you know, okay, that's great. Now you go through that for 4 years or whatever, and now you're going on to graduate school. You go, wait a minute. I want an education. I know, so I've done my social life. I'm done with that. What's wrong with online education?
So what's happening here is for the very top schools, the big brand names, the club is still very appealing. So exactly what, all that socializing, the networking and so on and so forth, but that's very expensive. And what you're seeing is increasingly available online programs that are approaching the quality, and we got this boundary. And my guess is the boundary is going to shift even higher, meaning that we're going to get more high quality schools like Illinois and Carnegie Mellon to offer online programs. And that's going to continue to erode from below the set of schools that are hanging on to the clubs.
Yeah, but the thing is, but it's going to be a long time for a university like Yale to lose its brand. When you think, in other words, the Yales, the Harvards, Cambridge, and Oxford are going to occupy the top slots for the next decade or two, just because the brand's been around for so long. What do you think?
I think you're right. I think part of this is, it's a classic case of, if you're selling a high quality branded good, it's supposed to be really superior. It's got to be exclusive. Mm-hmm. And that's the club. And I'm not saying it's club meaning bad, but that's the club. And like you said, I think it'll last longer at the undergraduate level for the reasons you mentioned than it will at the graduate level. The MBAs are, most of them are above 25 and some are in their 30s. And their lives have already begun. I mean, how much club stuff do they need? Some wouldn't like it, but I think we're finally facing a point where the really high cost of residential education, schools like mine raised tuition 2% in real terms above inflation for 25 years in a row.
Sure.
Oh, you get to a high price.
Yeah. But at the same time, your acceptance rate is 7%. I mean, the thing, at least it was in the law school, and I looked, I was going like, wow, you have a 7% chance of getting into Yale Law School. That's it. They reject 93% of the applicants. So they may be able to raise their prices, but they still have a strong demand. In other words, there's a big demand for the Yale Law School brand out there. I think the business school's the same way. In other words, I don't know what your acceptance application rates are, but you probably, the reason you can raise the rates is that it's price insensitive. In other words, think about it. At USC, somebody was willing to spend $500,000 to get into USC, to have the USC brand, one of the actors there. I mean, that's kind of interesting. My wife went to USC. I was going, did you have your cousin give him $500,000 to get into USC? No. Okay.
What a quagmire of a mess. And I have to question the schools as well, because they know those kids could not pass those tests. Those kids went to school for 12 years in the same system. Most of them did. I mean, my son went to the same school for 12 years. They know what your child is capable of. So when that kid, and you know what schools they're going to, when they graduate from high school, you know where they're going. And you cannot tell me that the schools did not know that that child was not capable of passing that test. You can't tell me that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think that is a check. It's not it's not always effective, because sometimes you get students who are apparently qualified, and there are a bunch of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can you tip the scales? But I agree with your first point. I mean, there's some people who are just out of the money. And somebody should step up and say, hey, there's something's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Nick,
The reason why I know this is that we even do it at a university graduation. We know where people are going next. So we sit there and we check off during the graduation, SAS, GTE, and we add up who hired the most students and things like that, right? During the graduation, we listen, and that's it's a game we play. But what's interesting to me in high school, they know where these kids are going. And like you said, just one simple check to make it legit. You don't have to question. I mean, I wasn't the best high school student. I had to work a lot to go to high school. And so to get into college, I didn't try the big university at first. I went to the small schools. I probably didn't qualify in most ways, other than I had a high IQ test. That's why I think it's funny Nick brought that up today, because I remember my teachers telling me, you test so high in IQ, let us help you get into university. And I was scared to go to university because I did not have the money to go to university. So I was scared to put my family or myself into a debt I couldn't manage. So I chose a different route and built my way up. But there are the schools know, and I feel like that there's some liability somewhere. Someone knew that this was happening, and this has been happening not just there; it's been happening everywhere.
Well, they have to figure out some barriers to entry. In other words, at some point in time, especially in a classroom that has a physical location, they can only hold so many students. I mean, if your classroom holds 30 or even 300, that's it. So you got to cut, and you have 1,000 applicants. You got to cut it off at some point in time.
I'm just highly disappointed.
You can't accept everybody.
Parents, because I would have never paid somebody off to put my child into something that they mentally probably could not handle.
Well, I think
very disappointing as a parent. And watching these people buy their children's way,
right,
rather than help them themselves into establishing themselves. There's something very wrong with the mentality of our society when people do that. I mean, there's just something very, very wrong. I was glad to see heavy punishments done. I think that they were done on a favoritism way. Not everybody was equally punished. And I don't think that that was right. I think everybody should have been equally punished. Everybody was doing the same crime. And so I don't know. What do you think, Dr. Edward? Am I too harsh here?
You too harsh?
Yeah. No, not possible.
Absolutely not, Kim. You are not too harsh.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah, well, the thing is, they were gaming the system. But I mean, here would be the counter argument. See, in law school, what they do is, whatever argument you have, okay, now you get to argue the other side. Go, why would you do that? Because somebody's going to pay you to argue the other side. Okay, I'll argue the other side. And here's the other side. Okay, the system may be gamed to begin with, because to get in, they actually do two things generally. And you would know more about this, Dr. Steiner, I would. But it goes back to my research when I was in the MBA program when I was 19 years old, which may have been a mistake, but that's another story. Okay, the thing is, what they do is usually cross-index with two boxes. One, your grade point average. That means how well do you listen and do you do what you're supposed to do? Two, either your LSAT, your GRE, your SATs, or whatever the scores are. And then there's like a matrix box. If you're in the top box, you get in. If you fall below in some of these other boxes, you're out. I mean, you almost don't even need an admissions counselor. You could take all the data, give it to a computer program, and they'll say you're admitted or you're not. So it becomes it could be a quite simple system. But here's the gaming on it. And Jim will appreciate this, because I told my son, because he went to Duke, I said, oh, you want to get into Duke? Yeah. Here's what you got to do. You got to game the GRE. Well, how do I do that? I said, do you know how much time and effort you spend on video games? Because he was into video games. I said, yeah, you got to spend that much time and effort studying the GREs, knowing every little thing about it. So, and spend at least a year studying it. Now, I was coaching him because the opposite coach says, oh, you just got to do it natural abilities. It's like chess. Jim, how many people just walk up, hey, I'm naturally smart and I'm now a grandmaster? Never. Okay, they always work your butt off, and then you do well. So he did that. He gamed it, got like a 1580 out of it, 1600. Gaming the GRE, then got a full scholarship to the Duke PhD in electrical engineering program. Okay, but here's the point. If you didn't have a parent that coached them to do that, they will never get there. And so what happens is in the elementary schools, they start off, and you know the Dalton School, Jim, one of the big chess schools. Oh, yeah. I was there not too long ago. In the Dalton School, what they do is they start training people on all the, not psychometric testing, but basically the ETS testing programs, seriously, which are your SAT, your GRE, your GMAT. It's all the same garbage over and over again. And they start training them in an early age, like an elementary school. And then by the time they go to high school and college, they whack these tests and they end up in the top box. And it's because the parents coaching, not the teachers coaching, that makes the difference whether that student goes to Duke on a full ride in a PhD program elementary in electrical engineering, or they end up going to Jones Community College. And that's the reality of it.
A comment or a question. Abhijeet, what is it?
I have it's a very good thing that Kim, which you have reminded that there are layers of partiality which you have seen into colleges and schools on the basis of punishment. And then now Nicholas has added that there are parents, and then they have layer of teachers, and then professionals and private coachings. But I have a question from Mr. Snyder. Is this difference between people, or the discrimination between people on the basis of their race or color or their economic group, it's a very, very long and historical story. And people who have been discriminating, and people who have been on the upper side of any era, maybe in history in past many 100 years, they also gain some of the power and money and then the position in the society. And at the other side, who were discriminated because of some difference, they went down, and now our societies have grown very liberal from before. So this cycle of building an asset, building in power and position, and then using that cycle, that power and position for making more laws or making more policies, which again discriminates people. This cycle, is there a solution to come out of this cycle, or bring a very harmonious culture between where there is no discrimination, right for all, everyone is equally punished and equally cherished? I think you can answer.
So are you asking about the US or global?
US. If you will speak about US, it will be more precise.
Okay, so here's my take on the US educational system and the implications for equal opportunity or the lack thereof. We have a lot of competition at the college and university level. And I personally believe that that's enhanced the quality and diversity of our offerings. But we have a very inequitable K through 12, which is dominated by public education, but also some private options. And you know, the disparities in K through 12 are vast. I mean, I was a public school kid, but I never went to school in the inner city. And you know, Nicholas was talking about this, you know, teaching kids really tough stuff. They just are not stretched. They don't have that set of aspirations. So I think what's really unfortunate is that we get these students starting out K through 12, and they're not developed. So they've been, in effect, discriminated against. And then they get to the college and universities, and then they're scrambling to give spots and access to students at that level. So it's a very strange thing. And if I may just say, what I came in today worried about was, how do we get the students transitioning into productive employment when you think about the conditions right now? We've got rungs of the ladder being taken down. The communities are under pressure. We've got 40 million people out of work. And then there's some technological pressures that are coming around AI. Just think about autonomous vehicles. And where is all this going to go? And I came in today's discussion, aside from being very happy to see everybody, I'm really quite concerned. I think this is the country's awakening to the need to do something better for populations, including K through 12 kids. But the conditions right now for having some impact and having success, those conditions are more difficult now than I've ever thought about in the past. So
I have a question for the board. I was going to let Ankit ask it, and maybe he might have to because I'm having technical difficulty. But I get these kind of questions all the time, especially now that we started Economic Monday, and everybody just loves the team. You know, thank you, Dr. Snyder and Abhijeet, for joining us, because these are global problems. This particular question is from an avid viewer, but she's at work right now, and she would wish her name not to be mentioned. She is a single mother. I know of her, so she's real. She is a single mother who's at work, and her name can't be mentioned. She has a child that's disabled and no support, not even government support or much. Insurance is very difficult, as we all know, to get, and very expensive. She has a huge student loan that is just no way out of, like Nick keeps mentioning to us. You can't charge off the student loan, and no way out of it. And it's so expensive that it costs more than her ability to even pay for housing, right? And utilities and things like that. She's working 3 jobs right now, trying to take care of her child. Of course, this situation with COVID has sent her into a tailspin that she can't hardly breathe anymore, right? And trying to keep her head above water. She's done, to me, very well. She's communicated with me, and I've communicated back with her quite frequently, just to try to keep people's spirits up. But she can't get ahead. She can't find a job that was her career base. She has a degree in psychology, and I think an advanced degree. But she's working 3 jobs. Where do we go? And you bring up the same problem. She's struggling and has been in our society for quite some time, and she was suffering. And then we have kids coming out of school with nowhere to go. What do we do? I mean, what can we put together as a team and plan forward? Because I'm concerned.
Well, I think one thing is you can give debt relief instead of bailing out the large corporations. You might bail out the people like the one you just described. And she's not alone. She's just one of many. And so how about some debt relief for the people instead of the corporations?
I agree.
Okay, here's the problem. Counselor. Okay, here's the problem. Okay, if you've ever been to Washington, D.C., the Tower of Power, and worked as a lobbyist in the Tower of Power, okay, there are lobby organizations, and I know I was with one for several years. It was quite impressive. There we go. Okay. Now the thing is, you got to see who the lobbyists are. And that's how I got our senators to actually come to Campbell Law School, because people at Campbell, how do you get senators to just come to you on the back? And I said, well, I'm a member of the 12th largest PAC in the country. Hello. Okay. And PACs make a difference because they make the political contributions. And all I did is spend time giving political contributions out. It's kind of fun. But let me tell you something about the wonderful students that are out there. They do not have a PAC. They don't even know what a PAC is. Let alone have a PAC. Now, if they had a PAC in Washington, D.C., then they could accomplish what you're trying to say, which is to actually repeal the BP CPA rule of 2005, which is the Bankruptcy Consumer Protection Act of 2005, which put a provision in that said student loans are not dischargeable in bankruptcy.
Right, they are not
dischargeable. It's a big problem. It's a big legal problem.
But I figured a loophole.
It didn't exist until 2005. Now,
I found a loophole yesterday.
If they allowed student loans to be dischargeable in bankruptcy, you wouldn't see 1.7 trillion in student debt. Okay? So all you have to do, if you want to correct this student debt problem, rather than creating a class of indentured servants, which I've yet to see that case argued before the U.S. Supreme Court, which I think is a case. Wait a minute.
Let's do it.
Now an indentured servant. Okay. Why am I indentured servant? Because I have a loan I cannot discharge through bankruptcy. I'm forever having to go to work to pay student loans. Okay. You're technically an indentured servant. I'm sorry. That's the way it is. It has not been argued before the Supreme Court.
Their argument back is that it was a freedom of choice. You had
solving the problem is a three-letter word. It's a PAC in Washington, D.C. You'd be surprised how well they do in the Tower of Power. Okay, you can literally get senators to show up on your beck and call if you're a member of a powerful PAC. Students have no PACs. They don't even know what a PAC is.
Well, maybe that's something we could do, Dr. Edward, is put together, even on a global basis, because I'm sure might be a problem globally for students.
Oh, no. Dr. Edward ain't going to go tell a student, hey, guys, you need to start a PAC. A PAC? Are you kidding me?
Not a PAC.
You don't want to get those Yaleys out there with a big PAC. The Yale student PAC? That could be a dangerous animal in Washington, D.C.
Dr. Edward, you brought up a huge concern that was weighing on my mind as well. I have found a loophole, and I'm going to talk to Nick about it because I don't know how legal well, it's a loophole, right? But and there's a loophole in law everywhere. If you really read every law written, which is a passion of mine, is you can find the loopholes because they're all written so that the judge can use that law as he deems fit when he makes his judgment. And this is what I tell people. That's why there's never justice in what we call the justice system. It's never the same. It is never the same founding. It's never the same basis. They create precedences, and those precedences are changed. But it's never been fair. But the thing is, it's up to us to go out there and find those loopholes. And if we want to use them, it's kind of like the NOL situation going on with Trump, right? I agree. If he had an NOL, then by God, let him use it, because that's one of the things that the IRS comes down on me about is an NOL I had the same time he did. So it must be an issue, a flagged, and it might be because I was Republican back then. I'm not Republican now, but maybe they're red flagging all Republicans that had NOLs. We've seen that happen.
Well, you're audited by a computer now, anyway. Roberto Saperno, a fifth-generation attorney in Italy, has joined us from Rome, and so he since he's had to spend time in the legal system in Rome for 5 generations. How is the legal system dealing with issues like racial inequality in Italy? What do you guys do over there?
As Roberto.
Hi, everybody. Well, we have a unique approach. We don't do anything.
That is a unique approach.
Which is the Italian way to deal with problems.
Oh, the Italian way to deal with problems. Ignore it.
Yeah, we defer. We wait for something to happen, and we usually betray the Germans, which is
okay, right. So what you're telling me in Rome right now, there's no marching in the streets, no protests, no nothing. They're doing it in London, but nothing in Rome going on.
In Italy, no.
Yeah, Italy. They're busy eating, drinking, and being merry.
Think about it. They got themselves sick because they felt bad for the Chinese when everybody was coming down on them, and they did that National Hug Day, Hug a Chinese Day, and unfortunately, that's how they got COVID so bad. But I mean, I'm not making a joke out of it. This is serious. The Italians, they don't.
Roberto, without riots and without protests, you never make it media. Come on, you need something bad to happen over there.
Absolutely. So we actually, I mean, and just another thing to explain how sometimes Italy works. We have a huge unemployment problem, and we have actually some trade unions for unemployed. So just having a trade union for who's unemployed it's kind of strange, but then again. And I'm from a city which is in south, it's Naples. And Naples, it's not Naples, Florida, it's Naples, Italy. Naples, as Naples, Florida, tend to be very hot during the summer.
Yes.
Summer starts more or less May. So usually the unemployed trade unions march 1 or 2 days a week in Naples to ask for jobs and for work and for whatever it is. until May, they usually have demonstrations and marches during the morning. When May starts, they shift everything after 5 o'clock, so that the sun is gone and they don't have to suffer too much while they're marching. So that's the way we approach usually problems. But besides jokes, we as race and all those things, it's a complex issue for Italians. We think we aren't really racist, and race has become I would say problem, not an issue. Let's call it an issue, which is very, very new to us. And since basically we had, since the immigration started in Italy, but generally it's more a matter on, it's not a matter of the color of skin or whatever. It's more a matter of fear of the people that immigrants are taking jobs or are basically somehow hampering the possibility to get a job. Color has never been a huge
Really,
issue.
it's taking jobs away. Right, but now you got this little virus that's taking jobs away, so you don't need immigrants anymore, do you? To take jobs away.
We actually do need immigrants, because I mean, there's part of our industry which basically relies only on immigrants, like agriculture and other things. But we had especially in some I wouldn't call them places, but we had a lot of problem with racism in the last few years, like in football. Also because I don't know why and when it happened, but most of the we have this thing which is they're called ultras, which are basically somehow the hardcore fans, and they turn more or less. The last 20 years, they turned right wing, very hardcore right wing, and I don't know. But in Italy, the idea of being a right winger is basically fascism. But there's nothing else that's not liberals, Republican, whatever. And in some instances, it came back to also color of your skin, or whatever. But usually, it's not a big problem. It's you're mostly judged for the person you are, not for the color of your skin.
I love that.
Roberto, I have a very small question, a very quick one. It's very good to see you from Italy, and I just want to know that across the globe, this is going to, and it has started from the United States of America. There are background music which is running across is the economy and the breakdown of recession which is yet to come up. Lots of loot and lots of robbery has happened in the United States. Always there is a gap between the government and people who have suffered a lot. And if I look at the number of Italy, the life losses and the deaths numbers are very high. In that scenario, how people are reacting to the government, because whatever the expectation they had from government regarding health system or regarding health services, it has proven to be not up to the mark. It has failed to save their lives. So people are not revolting, they're not responding to government, or government is so powerful that they are keeping them calm, tight, or maybe government is very good, very nice to them, giving lots of freebies and lots of repairing work is happening. I want to know about it.
That's a good question.
Well,
how's the government in Italy?
Weak as usual.
Weak as usual? What do you mean by that?
Well, we changed. I mean, we changed more government in our history than I changed shirts in 1 week. So, I mean, I get your point, and well, there's one way of saying that we are we are poets, travelers, and saints, and we're not done for the war, and we're not done for the revolution. So it's pretty easy to to control you don't need a strong government to control Italians. As long as things we are used to the best, to the worst. So, I mean, there's the government has made I mean, they made mistakes, but I think in the pandemic, no one can say they did it all right. I think maybe Norway, maybe New Zealand did most of the things right, but we made errors and the government made errors. We will judge them, we will discuss, we will insult them as usual. We'll make fun of it a lot, and nothing will happen.
Okay, so the government doesn't do anything over there, and people just die of coronavirus. Let's go to Malaysia. Sharif, in Malaysia, what did the government do over there, and how many deaths do we have in your 33 million person population? What's going on in Malaysia? Can't hear you. Can't hear. Oh no, he's got speaker issues. Can't hear you.
So while Sharif
plug it in and out.
Yeah, he's going to have to get. Yeah, yes, Professor.
Well, while he is fixing his sound issues, it's fascinating to hear the report from Italy, and the issue of immigration is on my mind. As people who were born here grow up here and they feel that the first rungs of the ladder are not within their reach, that's sad, but I think that sadness can turn to anger very easily and there may not be a logic to this, but a sense that illegal immigration has resulted in fewer opportunities. And I wonder what's going to happen going forward when we've got 40 million people unemployed. As an academic, I've always thought about this and thought, well, it's good to get more skilled people in. A related issue now is with Hong Kong. I don't know if you've read about this, but the UK is talking about inviting people from Hong Kong who have the appropriate designation to just move to the UK, and there was some discussion in the US. But I think this is a very combustible issue for the US right now with the unemployment. Technological change is going to make jobs yet more scarce. And of course, the inequities around K through 12. I think this is fascinating. And Italy, maybe I'm wrong on this, but Italy has a problem with illegal immigration that's potentially very significant. There's so many access points through the Mediterranean. So I'm just, I just wonder as we go into this period, whether it's the U.S. or Southern Europe or various parts in Asia, whether immigration is going to become just a really difficult issue and combustion for the politicians.
Mm-hmm. It has been used in Italy as a scare tactic for a long time. For the right-wing politician has used immigration as basically the mother of any evil, and of course it is combustible, and people is sensitive because there's also a cultural clash. Most of the people coming in is young, and we are getting older. There are, we have there's various reasons why we have tolerated illegal immigration for years in Italy. One of those being that we have a good relationship with all the Mediterranean countries. and we don't want to have any kind of conflict with them. But since Libya has basically gone wild, and there's no government anymore there, which is the and as ever a good idea from the French. I mean, but then again, since there is no government, the problem has increased, and we have tolerated a long time because most of the immigrants weren't actually going to stay in Italy. The idea was to go through Italy and go to Germany, go to England,
Right.
go to France.
Just passing by.
Yeah, I mean,
on our way up north.
Yeah, the first figure were 75% of illegal immigrants coming to Italy were going to move to other countries. So it wasn't a big problem for us. It was more a problem at the beginning, like how to, with the boat sinking and this all the activity to save the people and to basically made them go through the process. But the idea was they will in any case disappear. We had a law which was fantastic. They would be recorded, and then they would receive a slip, basically ordering them to leave the country.
Mm-hmm.
And basically it was a way to say, like, go to Europe, go to the Northern Europe, who cares what you're doing, because there's no way that somebody would take a train or a ferry and go back to Libya or to whatever other country. So the problem is that now most of the countries have also unemployment issues in Northern Europe.
Wow. Yeah.
And there is a lot of people which stays in Italy. And I mean, again, it's we don't have a rule as usual in it, but mostly they are accepted. In some cases, we perfectly know that we can't go ahead without. As I said, agriculture is a sector where nobody wants to pick up tomato in the middle of the summer in the hottest place in the world. And this is basically one of those jobs which is on the paper for Italians, but no Italian would do it.
Right.
I remember when I was young, in northern Italy, where my mother's from, they have apples, and there are usually 1 or 2 weeks in September where you went to the farms, as a youngster, and would work for picking apples. And you made a little bit of money. It was fun because you stayed in the farm with the other youngsters and so on and so on. Sure. Nowadays, it's everything. For example, just an example which you can understand how the things go. In northern Europe, in northern Italy, there's an area where they have an asparagus and white asparagus, which is renowned. It's very good asparagus and so on and so on. And this year, most of the production wasn't picked up because they couldn't arrange people from Moldavia, Romania to come over, and there was no way to substitute them with Italians.
Mm-hmm.
Similar in India and its surrounding, I guess, which takes us around the illegal immigration. What Roberto is saying is India and Bangladesh has porous borders and it's a very long border. So always there is a infiltration of illegal immigration between India and Bangladesh. Recently, when in 2014 our Prime Minister took over, then he started doing as per the manifesto what he had to make our borders little stronger than before, so that this illegal immigration and infiltration can be stopped. If you will go little back of 70 years back in history, then you will see India and Pakistan got divided after lots of massacres, genocide, and lots of Hindu-Muslim riots. So the basis of division was both of these communities were not so happy with each other. Still, we have largest Muslim populations other than Indonesia. So from my belief,
about immigration from Bangladesh, correct me if I'm wrong. I read somewhere which was crazy to me, that there was a new law a couple of years ago, maybe 1 year ago, where they were searching for papers, and actually there's people who is third, fourth generation Indian, which is actually still considered as an illegal immigrant because they don't have papers or something like this. There's Modi made a law where you needed to have some kind of document.
I have a solution for your Pakistan Indian problem where the immigrants go back and forth. You can build a wall. You can build a wall. Listen to me, and Mexico will pay for it. Okay, because they're into building walls, and Mexico paying for it. With that, Malaysia. I wonder if we can find out what the COVID-19 situation is over in the population of 33 million. How many COVID-19s? Are we still not being able to hear you, Sharif?
Sharif,
no.
We are not. You'll have to
we'll
sign
never
up.
know what's going on in Malaysia. Can't hear you.
But really, we try to do a correction into the law, Nicole.
Plug in and out. Take your headset and plug in and out.
Really? Why does stuff like that work? My IT guys used to tell me, turn the computer on and turn it back off again. It works. I'm going like,
resetting the glitch. You know, computers are built by humans.
I know, but the thing is,
smarter than us, but they're not.
Turning things on. See, technology really bugs
AI is not smarter than humans either.
I bought a new iPhone, and the thing is, the person puts one iPhone next to the other, and all the data got transmitted over. I don't know how stuff like that happens, but
this is what I speak on, Nick, and I tell people it's only.
Also, Professor Scott, I wouldn't worry about the job. The jobs are all coming back. They're all coming back. Okay.
You know what I miss about this? I miss all the people that I used to go out and meet and network with and speak to. You know, everybody went to this platform of speaking online, and I backed away from that. And I just kind of stuck to the TV show because I found it a lot more interesting to talk to people from all over the world on certain subjects.
And talking to the person who's from down the street from you.
Well, yeah.
Well, talking down the street, a person from all over the world. That's a good question.
It's been more interesting to me to hear from other knowledgeable people rather than me talk about what I know. But and so I've learned so much, and I'm still learning every day, and then trying to find solutions.
As soon as Sharif gets on, what I like is that in Malaysia, they had, last time I looked at this, I'm trying to get an update, they had a population of 33 million with a total death count of 109 people. That's it. In Malaysia, and I don't know.
Well, if you want to, we can kind of quickly, because we do this occasionally, and we got the board here. Be kind of interesting just to look at
COVID-19 board.
But the thing is, folks, you know, we're over 6 million people tested positive.
There it is.
It's not 12 o'clock yet, so we might see a glitch. You know, change.
6 million
yesterday. But we're close to 500,000 deaths, which is not for the U.S., but for worldwide, which is what Nick and I actually calculated that we would be at near June, and this is June 1st. If you look at just the U.S., right, we're total deaths of 106,000. New cases yesterday, 4,272. So, but if you look at, you know, Russia is struggling as well. But the UK managed to get it under control. Italy, they haven't reported their numbers over the weekend, which is we're used to that now. But they'll show us their numbers later. But they've managed to somewhat control things. But let's take a look down. Where's can you hear me? Did I die?
No, you're good.
Okay. So it's interesting to me because I think what we're going to see as countries get this under control, we're also going to see their economic situation get better. And one of the things that interested me was Iceland. I keep bringing this up, but the fact that they never shut anything down, and the way they utilized their test kits was just so economically smart. Instead of testing people who were already sick, they just said, if you're already sick and have symptoms of any kind, just go over here and we'll treat you and get well. We're going to test communities of people who aren't sick and try to catch this where it could flare up. So during a time when there weren't a lot of means to test, they took a very intelligent approach. They never closed. They closed certain schools but only age groups that might be at risk or students who might be at risk. So they took a very intelligent, analytic approach to their community. Of course, smaller, easier to enforce policies. But what I told Nick that I found very interesting about Iceland compared to most other people that we've talked to, but Hong Kong was another one who did this. They had pandemic policies in place. So they already had their flashlight and their tools for an emergency situation, right?
That also applies to South Korea.
Right. South Korea was another one that just
better prepared because they've experienced these pandemics in a more serious way.
But yeah, and so these are footprints, though, that we should be looking at. Even moving forward, we should take a look at just containment, because this is what I tell people. This could be just like HIV and Ebola and a bunch of other viruses and diseases that we never find a vaccine or a preventive means for, other than just establishing a better immunity, but also just establishing standards of control. And that's what we do for all of those viruses now that we understand them better. We have treatments for them, but we do testing, early detection, isolation, and treatments. And this might just be a situation where we have to learn to do that.
So Kimberly, could I close off my time with you by giving you my partial list of losers coming out of the COVID crisis?
Please, I would love to hear this. Thank you.
When the economy comes back, what will change? And of course, I don't want to skip over the people who've actually gotten the disease and the many who have passed away. But if we go beyond that, and we imagine that we're going to get beyond this in some way, whether we have a vaccine or not, we'll maybe have better treatments, better testing, and so on and so forth. Which sectors are going to be under the most pressure for the longest period of time? Well, travel, airlines, cruises, trains, subways, buses, very difficult.
Absolutely.
Higher education, we talked about it, but for multiple reasons. In terms of in the U.S., we have lots of programs that rely on people coming from outside the U.S. It's not clear that they can get here, that they can actually matriculate. Plus, as we talked about earlier, we're going to have the emergence of very good online alternatives in a way that this was in place before, but it's certainly coming on stronger now. Restaurants. It's just a very tough business model to run a restaurant on 50% capacity. And I just don't, I'm worried about jobs in all these sectors coming back, but that's on my list. Now, this may sound snobbish, but the arts, museums, who's going to want to go? And also fun stuff like improv and sketch comedy and Second City in Chicago. I don't know if you've been to live theater, but if you catch it, sometimes they're projecting their voices and you can just see the spit coming out of their mouths. And it's like, who's going to want to be in the front row? So the art. Hotels, cities. I think cities are going to be challenged for multiple reasons. We talked about it, and this was before the rioting and the protesting and the massive devastation to cities. But they're going to be under a lot of fiscal pressure, and then people are going to be able to work from home. And I've seen it around the New York City area. There's just massive movement, temporary, and in some cases, I think it's going to be permanent, to outside these cities. And just imagine, even for the companies that continue to operate and want people to come to work, they got to take the subway. And when they get to work, what do they have to do? They have to take an elevator. A lot of people are just freaked out right now about getting into an elevator. And then families with kids, and single families, single parents with kids. I think this thing has put so much pressure on these families, and then of course the people whose businesses are not going to come back, and the unemployment, the people, even when they get their jobs back, they will have suffered a big setback. So with that unfortunate list of losers coming out of the crisis, maybe next time I'll talk about the winners.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
Well,
Some positive aspects.
Winners, but maybe a task force,
Right.
maybe some tasks that we could take amongst ourselves. We're intelligent people, of finding out how some of these things. One of the things you mentioned about theater, I love, but I saw Tony Shalhoub in a show in New York. I love to go to New York for shows, and one of the things that happened when you said that is when he did something, he spit out a grape. And that grape, I was sitting front row, and guess who got hit by that grape? So,
I'm dumping my stocks right now in the airline industry. I was listening very carefully. I dumped the restaurant industry. I'm dumping my stock in education, the Apollo Group. I used to own that. That's gone. And I'm dumping. How do you dump family stocks? I don't see that. So,
okay.
or city stocks. But anyway.
Professor Edward, we're going to.
I want to hear the winners because I want to know what stocks to buy.
I believe in solutions. That there's a solution for a lot of things, not everything. But we'll find it. But let's make a task force as a team. You yourself said that you speak with some really great and wonderful people. I'm sure you meet a lot of people every day. That maybe we can pull together some task groups of brains, right? Not people politically interested.
I think most importantly, we need the rungs on the ladder for young people.
Rungs on the ladder. And